Case 1. The unsolved disappearance of Jessica Gutierrez. In the quiet town of Edmond, South Carolina, a summer night in June 1986 would mark the beginning of a haunting mystery that would echo through decades. Jessica Gutierrez, a lively 4-year-old with a bright smile, disappeared from her bedroom without a trace. What was meant to be a peaceful night turned into a nightmare that shattered her family's world. Jessica was the youngest of 4 siblings, raised by her mother Debbie after a difficult divorce. The family struggled, but love kept them close. That evening, a cruel twist of fate rearranged the usual sleeping arrangements. Jessica's brother, suffering from an earache, was allowed to sleep with Debbie, while Jessica was put to bed with her older sisters. The night air was still, the stars silent witnesses to the unseen dread about to unfold. Morning broke with a disquieting silence. Debbie woke late, sensing something was wrong. The front door, always locked at night, was wide open. Their dog, usually calm and outside, was pacing nervously inside the house. Under the back window, a curtain rod lay on the ground and the protective screen was removed. A chill ran down Debbie's spine as she stepped into the girl's room. Jessica was gone. Rebecca, Jessica's 6-year-old sister who had shared the bed with her, whispered a terrifying tale. A man with a beard and a tall hat like a wizard had taken Jessica while she slept. At first, Debbie dismissed it as the confused fears of a child, a bad dream fading with the dawn. But Rebecca's story remained unchanged, her voice trembling with truth and fear. The police arrived swiftly, their searchlights cutting through the early morning gloom. They scoured the house and the yard, piecing together fragments of evidence. A fingerprint was found on the window's exterior glass, a fragile thread leading to an unknown man. Nearby, cigarette butts and a pack of cigarettes littered the ground, silent witnesses to a chilling intrusion. Yet, the fingerprint yielded no matches in the FBI database. Time stretched thin as days turned to weeks, and Jessica's trail seemed to vanish into the humid summer air. Debbie's heart grew heavy with dread. Suspicions clouded the investigation. Debbie recalled her recent breakup with an aggressive man, known for his controlling ways and drinking habits. Could he be the shadow lurking behind Jessica's disappearance? The man denied any involvement, and no concrete evidence connected him to the crime. The investigation broadened. Jessica's father lived out of state and was quickly ruled out. The FBI joined the search, combing the endless fields and forests surrounding Edmond, distributing flyers in every town and city nearby. Airplanes scoured the skies, but Jessica remained lost to the world. Days turned into months. Debbie's grief deepened as police communication faltered, and hope slipped through her fingers like sand. Tensions flared when Debbie accused the sheriff of negligence, only to be met with threats of withdrawal of support. The conversation was recorded, a damning testament to the frustration engulfing the case. Then, after 10 long weeks, the investigation took a turn. A local man's arrest for unrelated crimes revealed fingerprints matching those found on Jessica's window. Thomas McDowell, a 27-year-old man with a beard and a tall cowboy hat, eerily similar to Rebecca's description, became the prime suspect. Thomas's connection to Debbie's property, where he had worked shortly before Jessica vanished, complicated the narrative. Was he the kidnapper or a convenient scapegoat? Without Jessica's body, the evidence was circumstantial at best. The shadow of justice wavered. Thomas was convicted on unrelated charges, while the kidnapping remained unresolved. A chilling confession by Thomas to a cellmate painted a gruesome picture of abduction, assault, and murder, but his demand for immunity kept the truth locked away. Debbie's fight didn't end there. She uncovered fabric fibers in Thomas's abandoned car that matched Jessica's pajamas. False leads surfaced, including a girl found in Kansas who was not Jessica. Public appeals brought momentary hope, but no answers. Years later, new leadership reopened the case. Advances in forensic science and renewed efforts brought Thomas back into the spotlight. His drastic change in appearance, smoking habits matching the crime scene, and fresh fingerprint evidence tightened the noose. In 2022, Thomas was arrested and charged. The courtroom became the stage for decades of pain and perseverance. Despite defense attempts to undermine evidence and challenge Rebecca's testimony, the jury found Thomas guilty. Life imprisonment was the verdict. Yet, the silence remained deafening. Jessica's remains were never found. Debbie's heart ached with unanswered questions, but her resolve never faltered. She and the new sheriff vowed to keep searching, to never let her daughter's memory fade. The courtroom, heavy with decades of unspoken sorrow, finally held the moment Jessica's family had waited for all these years. Thomas McDowell, once a shadowy figure hiding behind a cowboy hat in silence, now stood exposed beneath the harsh glare of justice. Yet even as the judge read the sentence, a life behind bars could never fully mend the broken heart of a mother who had lost her child to the night. The trial unveiled grim details, confessions whispered behind prison walls, fingerprints that refused to fade, and witnesses who pieced together a portrait of a man consumed by darkness. Yet, the crucial piece, the remains of Jessica, remained elusive, hidden by time and cruelty. Debbie, worn but unbowed, refused to let the silence win. Each day was a battle against grief and memory, a search not just for her daughter's remains, but for meaning amid the emptiness. The town of Edmond, too, carried the weight of Jessica's story, a scar etched into its quiet streets and summer skies. The years following the verdict saw new technologies breathe life into old evidence. Fingerprints once overlooked, fibers found in unlikely places, and conversations long buried became pillars of a fragile hope. Debbie's own investigations unearthed threads of truth, the fabric of a nightmare woven tightly but imperfectly. Amidst corruption and inertia, the local sheriff's office faced scandal and change. The old guard gave way to new hands willing to confront the shadows of the past. With FBI assistance and a fresh team of investigators, the cold case was no longer forgotten. New fingerprints surfaced, tobacco brands matched. The man who had vanished behind a facade was revealed in fragments. Testimonies aligned, stories converged, and slowly, a mosaic of truth took shape. Yet, the absence of Jessica's remains cast a long shadow. Without her body, doubts lingered. Could justice truly be served without the final proof? For Debbie, the answer was clear. The fight was far from over. The search continued, fueled by a mother's relentless love and a community's vow to remember. The empty room in Debbie's home, the silent playgrounds, and the empty chair at the dinner table were reminders of a daughter lost too soon. Jessica's story, wrapped in mystery and pain, remains a beacon, a call to never let disappearances fade into the night, a testament to the enduring power of hope amidst darkness. The relentless passage of time did little to dull Debbie's determination. Each morning she rose burdened with the memories of that terrible night, yet unyielding in her quest for answers. The void left by Jessica's disappearance was an ever-present ache, a wound unhealed, a story unfinished. While the world moved on, Debbie remained tethered to a truth only she could pursue. Months and years blurred into one another, each bringing new leads and fresh heartbreak. Local law enforcement, initially sluggish and dismissive, faced mounting pressure as Debbie tirelessly pushed for renewed investigations. Flyers were distributed, not just around Edmond, but across the state. Volunteers combed forests and abandoned buildings, searching every shadowed corner for the faintest trace of Jessica. Despite advances in forensic technology, hope often felt like a flickering candle threatened by the howling winds of uncertainty. Fingerprints and cigarette butts collected near the scene lingered as silent witnesses, but many tests yielded frustratingly inconclusive results. The case files grew thick with cold leads, each one a thread that frayed before it could be woven into the fabric of resolution. Meanwhile, Thomas McDowell slipped into the darker corners of the public's awareness. A man marked by suspicion and shadow, his reputation haunted by whispered accusations and distant memories. His earlier conviction for assault on an unrelated woman cast a grim light. Yet without Jessica's body, the scales of justice hesitated to tip fully. Then came the breakthrough, one of those rare moments where fate and persistence collided. A fingerprint, stored away and forgotten, resurfaced in the database after a man's unrelated arrest. The pattern matched the print on Jessica's window. Thomas McDowell was no longer just a shadow in the fog. He was the man whose face and habits matched Rebecca's fearful description. The revelation reignited the case with fervor. Investigators pored over every detail of Thomas's past, uncovering connections, inconsistencies, and chilling hints of guilt. Witnesses recalled the cowboy hat and beard, the strange aura of menace that had passed through the neighborhood. Yet the absence of the ultimate proof, the girl herself, kept the courtroom doors closed to full justice. Years stretched on, and the justice system grappled with the weight of evidence versus the absence of closure. Thomas's prison confessions, whispered in the dark, were met with cold skepticism. His demand for immunity was a cruel barrier that left victims and families suspended in agony. Undeterred, Debbie's resolve intensified. She became a detective in her own right, tracking down clues others overlooked. A chance discovery in an abandoned vehicle, fibers matching Jessica's pajamas, offered a ray of hope. But the path remained treacherous, littered with false hopes and dead ends. The tides slowly began to turn as forensic science leapt forward. DNA analysis, once a dream, now became a tool to crack cold cases. The new sheriff, with fresh eyes and unrelenting will, reopened old files and reached out for federal support. A team of dedicated agents scoured decades of evidence, breathing life back into a case that had been frozen in time. Test after test, fingerprint after fingerprint, cigarette pack after cigarette pack, each piece was scrutinized. Thomas's changing appearance, his attempts to erase his past identity, became futile against the relentless march of science. The truth emerged from the shadows, casting long, revealing light on a man who had lived for years in the silence of suspicion. In January 2022, decades after that dark June night, Thomas was finally arrested. The courtroom, steeped in the ghosts of years lost, awaited the trial that would give voice to long-suppressed truths. Defense attorneys scrambled to dismantle the mounting evidence, questioning the freshness of fingerprints, the reliability of childhood testimony, and the absence of Jessica's remains. Yet, the tide was unstoppable. Witnesses recounted confessions, fingerprints linked Thomas to the scene with undeniable clarity, and the jury was compelled by the weight of proof built over decades. The verdict came, a life sentence that marked a moment of justice long overdue. But the victory was bittersweet. Jessica's body was never recovered, the final mystery remaining locked away in the cold earth. For Debbie, the nightmare did not end with a verdict. The absence of physical closure meant the emotional wounds still bled raw. She pledged to continue the search, driven by love, memory, and the hope that one day the silence would break. Jessica Gutierrez's story remains a solemn reminder. The shadows may hide many secrets, but a mother's love is relentless, and truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of surfacing. In the heart of Edmond, her memory lives on, an eternal flame that refuses to be extinguished. Have you subscribed to my channel yet? Please hit that subscribe button for me. In return, I'll keep bringing you even better videos about the world's most terrifying cases. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you have any ideas or suggestions. Years slipped away, and though justice had been served in the courtroom, the true final chapter of Jessica's story remained unwritten. The absence of her remains was a void that echoed louder than any verdict. For Debbie, the fight extended beyond prison walls and legal battles. It was a daily pilgrimage of hope, memory, and an unyielding refusal to let the past fade into silence. Her quest was marked by tireless searches in the woods and fields surrounding Edmond, often accompanied by a new sheriff who shared her determination. Together, they pursued every tip, revisited old sites, and engaged the community to keep Jessica's memory alive. The physical search became a metaphor for the emotional journey, a mother's unbreakable bond reaching into the shadows, seeking closure. Despite the decades of pain, Debbie found strength in the small victories. The technological advances that once seemed impossible now fueled new leads. As forensic experts revisited evidence with tools her younger self could only dream of, fingerprints that had gone unnoticed were now analyzed with unprecedented precision. DNA, once a promise of tomorrow, became a weapon of truth today. The painstaking process of re-examining old fibers, stains, and minute particles took time. Yet every new piece uncovered held the potential to bring Jessica's story into sharper focus. Community memorials and press conferences kept the spotlight on the case, reminding the world that a little girl's disappearance was never just a cold file. Volunteers joined in searches. Social media campaigns rekindled interest. Every new generation learned Jessica's name. The town of Edmond refused to forget, binding its scars with collective resolve. Murals and plaques appeared, honoring Jessica and the countless missing children whose stories hang suspended in time. Each gathering, each shared memory, was a silent vow that their stories mattered. Meanwhile, Thomas McDowell sat in prison, stripped of his cowboy hat and facade, a man whose past finally caught up with him. Though he remained silent on the whereabouts of Jessica's remains, his conviction symbolized a triumph of persistence over indifference. Within the sterile walls of his cell, the echoes of decades-old crimes lingered, a stark reminder that justice, though delayed, had arrived. The courtroom drama itself was a watershed moment for the community, a painful reckoning with a past long buried beneath denial and neglect. The emotional toll on Debbie and her family was immense, yet the closure of the trial was both a release and a reminder of what was still lost. The absence of Jessica's body, the final piece of the puzzle, weighed heavily on all who sought true justice. For Debbie, the greatest victory was not the sentence passed, but the promise kept to never stop searching, never stop hoping. The empty space in her home, once filled with fear and despair, became a shrine to remembrance and a beacon of unwavering love. Every photograph, every keepsake, was a testament to a life interrupted, but never forgotten. Her advocacy extended beyond personal grief. Debbie became a voice for the voiceless, a relentless champion for missing children nationwide. She worked with law enforcement agencies, participated in awareness campaigns, and helped establish support networks for families enduring similar pain. Her story became one of resilience, transforming tragedy into a call for change. Jessica's story is a testament to the power of a mother's heart against the darkest of nights. It is a reminder that even when the world turns away, those who love us will never cease fighting. The case may have closed in court, but its echoes live on in the memories, the quiet prayers, and the hope that someday justice will bring peace. As the sun sets over Edmond, the stars above shine quietly, keeping watch over a little girl who slipped away but was never forgotten. Her name whispered on the wind, carried by those who remember, a beacon for all lost souls seeking light in the darkness. Case 2. The mysterious disappearance of Debbie Lynn Randall. Debbie Lynn Randall was born on August 21, 1962, in the seemingly quiet town of Marietta, Georgia. She grew up surrounded by the comfort of a loving family, alongside 2 older brothers. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy lurked the fractures that often hide in families, the divorce of her parents shortly after her birth, a split that could have left scars deeper than the surface revealed. Despite this, her father remained a presence in their lives, a tether to the past that lingered as their mother remarried a man named Roy, who became Debbie's stepfather. The family settled in a small apartment within a peaceful neighborhood near a military base, a place where one might assume safety was a given. Debbie was the embodiment of childhood innocence, a cheerful, vibrant child who delighted in simple pleasures. She was known for her love of Friends basketball and a large collection of dolls that filled her room with silent companions. But as any true story of darkness unfolds, innocence would soon face an unimaginable rupture. On the evening of January 13, 1972, Debbie was just 9 years old. After a typical family dinner, her mother sent her on a familiar errand, a trip to the nearby laundromat. This was no ordinary outing, but part of a routine chore Debbie was accustomed to. She was expected to watch over the laundry while it was washing, a responsibility that reflected a child beginning to navigate independence. The laundromat was mere hundreds of yards from their home, just across the street, which gave her mother little cause for worry. Indeed, in those times it was common for children to assist with household tasks, and Debbie had even formed friendships with other girls who frequented the laundromat. On this particular day, the plan deviated slightly. Debbie's older brother, usually accompanying her, was feeling unwell and chose to stay home to watch his favorite TV show. Consequently, her stepfather Roy took his place, driving the laundry there and loading it into the machines. Debbie waited inside, clutching a box of detergent, anticipating a quick return. However, the ordinary turned ominous as dusk approached. Debbie's mother noticed that the laundry hadn't been brought back as expected. Growing concerned, she and Roy set out on foot to the laundromat. But when they arrived, Debbie was nowhere to be found. The laundromat employee reported that Debbie had left some time ago and had not returned since. Panic began to creep into the air. The routine errand that should have been safe was unraveling into something sinister. As the search extended beyond the laundromat, an unsettling clue surfaced. A box of detergent spilled near a parked car in the nearby parking lot. The mother's heart sank. She immediately recognized the brand and container as Debbie's. As searchers combed the area, neighbors joined in, but the only tangible sign was the detergent spill, an eerie marker of disturbance. Investigators scrutinized the scene carefully. The detergent lay just inches from a parked car and on the vehicle's door. Fresh fingerprints were found located unusually low on the door, far below the handle. This anomaly hinted at a grim possibility. Perhaps a struggle had occurred here, or the perpetrator had grabbed Debbie in this precise spot, leaving his mark on the car in the process. The fingerprints were collected and sent to forensic experts, as officers began canvassing the neighborhood for the vehicle's owner to determine if the prints matched. Meanwhile, the laundromat staff confirmed nothing unusual was seen. Debbie had simply waited for the wash to finish, grabbed her detergent box, and left. The trail, however, grew cold quickly. Then came the testimony of a critical witness, 12-year-old Sandra, walking with a friend toward the laundromat, helping carry dirty clothes. Suddenly, they saw a horrifying scene. A man forcibly pulling a struggling girl into a dark pickup truck parked nearby. The girl screamed, struggled desperately, but the man slammed the door shut and sped away, nearly hitting the girls as he fled. Sandra, at the time, thought nothing of it, assuming the man was a relative. Fear and confusion silenced her for years. But upon learning of Debbie's disappearance, she bravely came forward, providing crucial details that would forever alter the investigation's course. According to Sandra, the vehicle was a dark, likely 1957 model pickup truck. The abductor was a young white man with thick dark hair, dressed casually in a white t-shirt, jeans, and black work boots. Another local girl added her observations, noting the same vehicle parked near Debbie's apartment that evening, driven by a man she initially mistook for her uncle until she saw his face. A nearby resident witnessed the truck nearly collide recklessly with his car, also seeing a girl inside, seemingly trying to escape while the driver held her firmly with one hand. With mounting witness accounts and physical evidence, the grim truth was undeniable. Debbie had been abducted. The community mobilized. Police issued alerts to patrol units, and artists sketched the suspect based on witness descriptions. An enormous search ensued, involving thousands of volunteers and law enforcement officers, setting records for the area's largest search effort. Yet despite their tireless work, no immediate trace of Debbie was found. Suspects came under scrutiny, including neighbors, family members, and convicted criminals nearby, but none were conclusively linked. Days passed, then weeks, as hope flickered like a candle in the wind. The mystery deepened, shadows lengthened, and a small girl's fate hung suspended in the cold winter air, an innocence stolen in the most brutal way imaginable. The investigation took a sudden and chilling turn when the police uncovered their first eyewitness account, one that would forever alter the course of the case. Sandra, a 12-year-old girl, was walking alongside a friend toward the very laundromat where Debbie had disappeared. As they carried their bundles of dirty clothes, an event unfolded that would haunt their memories forever. Out of nowhere, a man appeared, a shadowy figure with a chilling intent. In the middle of the street, he grabbed a struggling girl, dragging her mercilessly toward a dark vehicle parked nearby. The girl's screams tore through the quiet evening air as she fought desperately to break free. But the man slammed the car door shut with a sickening finality, slid into the driver's seat, and sped away. The vehicle nearly struck Sandra and her friend as it roared off, leaving behind a trail of shock and fear. At the time, Sandra's innocent mind struggled to comprehend the horror she had just witnessed. She convinced herself that the man must have been a relative, perhaps the girl's father, collecting her late at night. Naively, she kept silent, fearing the consequences of speaking out or simply not understanding the gravity of the moment. Years later, when the truth of Debbie's disappearance emerged, Sandra courageously stepped forward, her memories vivid and crucial. Her description of the man was precise: a young white male with thick, dark hair, dressed simply in a white t-shirt, jeans, and black work boots. The vehicle was a dark pickup truck, likely dating back to 1957, a haunting relic from a bygone era that added a layer of eerie mystery to the unfolding tragedy. Adding weight to Sandra's testimony, another local girl recalled the same dark pickup truck that evening. She initially mistook the driver for her uncle, but was struck by the stranger's piercing gaze as he stopped in front of her building. Her description painted a picture of a white man with medium-length dark hair details that aligned chillingly with Sandra's account. The dark pickup truck wasn't just a passing shadow, it was parked ominously near the same car where the spilled detergent was found, linking the scenes of disappearance and disturbance in a silent, sinister narrative. But the terror didn't end there. A man living near Debbie's home en route to the hospital nearly collided with a recklessly driven dark pickup truck, likely a Dodge. The driver, estimated to be around 30 years old with dark hair, seemed oblivious to the danger he posed. The witness's most harrowing observation was seeing a young girl in the truck, struggling desperately, seemingly trying to escape, while the driver maintained a firm grip on her with one hand. Piecing these fragments together, the police found no doubt left in their minds. Debbie had been abducted. Mobilizing swiftly, law enforcement disseminated descriptions of the suspect's vehicle and driver to all patrol units. Artists crafted sketches based on the testimonies of the three witnesses, faces and details etched into the growing mosaic of the investigation. The search for Debbie escalated rapidly. Some officers scoured neighborhoods, checking vehicles that matched the description, while others coordinated an ever-expanding search operation. Volunteers flooded in, locals, officers from neighboring towns, all united by a desperate hope. In total, approximately 4,000 people took part in the search. This unprecedented mobilization set records not just for the city, but for the entire state, a testament to the community's determination to find Debbie and bring her home. The investigation into Debbie Lynn Randall's disappearance grew increasingly complex and grim as detectives tirelessly pursued every possible lead. They began by examining those closest to Debbie: male neighbors, her stepfather Roy, and even her biological father. Each was scrutinized intensely, but none bore the mark of guilt. Debbie's father, who worked in the same city, was devastated upon hearing the news and threw himself into the search with a desperate urgency, joining the efforts at every turn. As the investigation expanded, authorities delved into the backgrounds of known criminals within a few miles of Debbie's home. Previous offenders were interviewed and investigated thoroughly, but none matched the chilling profile that was slowly emerging. The search stretched on relentlessly, spanning over 2 weeks, yet each day seemed to dissolve into dead ends and cold trails. Then, on January 29th, a crucial breakthrough came unexpectedly. Several university students, newly recruited into the search teams, ventured into the dense woods several miles from Debbie's house. After hours of painstakingly combing through the undergrowth, one of the students stumbled upon something that would shatter the fragile hope still clinging to the community. A set of tracks leading away from the main trail, deep into the forest's shadows, as if something heavy had been dragged there. Driven by a mix of dread and determination, the searchers followed the tracks for nearly 150 feet until they came upon a human body. The realization struck them with a harrowing finality. They had found Debbie Randall. Her body lay in a somber silence, clothed in the same lavender dress and dark blue, zip-up jacket with a hood that her mother had described from the day of Debbie's disappearance. But the scene was not whole. Her shoes, a cherished Christmas gift she had adored just weeks prior, were missing, leaving only her socks behind, a haunting detail that whispered of a violent struggle. Medical experts who examined the body confirmed the worst. The cause of death was strangulation. There were also signs that Debbie had been sexually assaulted. Among the forensic evidence was a single dark hair, almost certainly belonging to the killer. However, since DNA analysis was not yet in common use, the evidence offered little more than a shadowy hint. Delving deeper, detectives turned their attention to the dirt and grime that coated Debbie's clothing. They enlisted a geologist to work alongside the forensic team, and together they made a startling discovery. Portions of the soil contained a unique type of clay, sourced from a mine less than 10 miles from their city, northern Georgia clay, known for its distinct properties and rarity in surrounding areas. Further examination revealed additional dirt stains that traced back to a different kind of clay, mined just 2 miles from where Debbie's body was discovered. These findings led to a grim theory. The killer had not murdered Debbie at the site where her body was found. Instead, he had transported her to remote locations, possibly to assault her before finally ending her life and abandoning her in the forest. The forensic analysis supported this chilling scenario. The patterns of soil and the absence of signs of a struggle around the body's location suggested Debbie was already dead when placed there. The trail of disturbed earth leading into the dense woods reinforced the idea that the perpetrator dragged her body to conceal the crime. The isolated and rugged terrain of the clay mining sites further complicated the investigation. These areas were difficult to access, even for workers familiar with the land. Detectives speculated the killer might have been employed at one of the local mines. Contacts within the mining companies corroborated that navigating these vast, uneven tracts of land was challenging, strengthening the theory that only someone familiar with the terrain could have taken Debbie there. Despite exhaustive efforts, attempts to match fingerprints found near the abduction site to employees or other suspects yielded no results. The fingerprints did not align with any records, leaving the investigation shrouded in mystery and frustration. The brutal nature of Debbie's murder sent shockwaves through the community. Thousands attended her funeral, mourning the loss of a young life torn away too soon. The local police vowed to continue their pursuit of justice, yet time and again they hit dead ends. For years, detectives painstakingly pursued dozens of suspects, but failed to definitively link any of them to the crime. For lead investigator Morris Nix, the case remained a personal priority throughout his entire career. At only 19 years old when Debbie was murdered, he had been involved from the outset, driven by a commitment to bring closure to the family and justice to Debbie. The brutal murder of Debbie sent shockwaves through the entire city, plunging the community into fear and grief. Thousands gathered to bid their final farewell at her funeral, mourning not just a life lost, but the dark mystery that refused to fade. Yet, beneath the sorrow, the local police tirelessly pursued justice, their efforts repeatedly stymied by dead ends and silence. For years, the case lay frozen unsolved, haunting every corner of the city. Detectives combed through countless leads and suspects, but none could be tied definitively to the crime. The weight of the unresolved tragedy pressed heavily on lead detective Morris Nix, who had been involved from the very start as a young, determined 19-year-old. Decades passed, and hope seemed to dim until the advent of DNA technology brought a flicker of light. Experts extracted a genetic profile from a single hair found on Debbie's body and entered it into the newly established FBI database. Yet, the silence persisted, no matches appeared. The killer remained a ghost, perhaps never caught or always lurking beyond the reach of the law. The darkness surrounding Debbie's death deepened, leaving a chilling question. How do you catch a shadow that refuses to show its face? Decades passed since the brutal murder of Debbie Lynn Randall, and though the city tried to heal, the shadow of that cold case lingered like a dark stain refusing to fade. In 2015, 43 years after that fateful day, the case was unexpectedly reopened. Detectives, armed with modern technology that would have been unimaginable decades ago, turned their attention once again to the victim's clothing, which had been carefully preserved in the evidence warehouse all these years. Under the scrutiny of advanced forensic tools, experts discovered biological material from an unknown man hidden within the fabric, a whisper from the past that refused to be silenced. Yet the passage of time had not been kind. The DNA had degraded significantly, allowing only a partial genetic profile to be reconstructed. Though incomplete, it was enough to reignite the fading hope of justice. In 2018, Debbie's mother, a woman whose life had been consumed by grief and yearning for answers, gave a heartfelt interview. She spoke of the unbearable pain that followed her daughter's death, confessing that she could no longer bear to live in the apartment where every corner echoed Debbie's absence. She had moved away, yet the slow, agonizing stagnation of the investigation chipped away at her spirit year after year. Her deepest desire was simple, yet profound: to see the case closed before her time came. Tragically, that wish went unfulfilled mere weeks after the interview. She succumbed to cancer at the age of 78 and was laid to rest beside her beloved daughter. The story's agony didn't end there. Sandra, the young witness who had bravely come forward years before, carried a burden of guilt that never faded. In a later interview, she revealed how she had blamed herself endlessly, convinced that she could have stopped the perpetrator if only she had acted differently, even if it meant sacrificing her own life to save Debbie's. By 2019, a surge of funding breathed new life into the police investigation. Experts were able to extract a full DNA sample from Debbie's preserved clothing, a breakthrough moment. Yet, even with this full profile, the perpetrator's DNA was not found in the FBI's extensive database. The killer remained a phantom, lurking just beyond the grasp of modern justice. Debbie's father, a man whose heart never healed, was also interviewed during this time. He revealed the depth of his sorrow, admitting that not a single day had passed over the decades without thoughts of his daughter. He kept a box of her old photographs close, his only hope to one day reunite with her in the afterlife. Sadly, he passed away in 2022, shortly after the interview, leaving behind a legacy of love and loss. With their single lead, the DNA detectives reached out to a specialized company in Florida that used an innovative method known as genetic genealogy. This cutting-edge technique connects DNA samples with relatives in public genetic databases, even distant ones, by analyzing shared genetic markers. The police submitted every biological sample collected over the years and began a painstaking wait. As the data processed, experts constructed a genetic profile of the unknown man and initiated an exhaustive search for his relatives. The power of genetic genealogy allowed them to detect links far beyond immediate family, navigating through branches of distant cousins and second-degree relatives. Thousands of potential relatives were examined, narrowing the search to a family living in Marietta, the very place Debbie had called home. After gaining consent, family members provided DNA samples, which led to an astounding discovery. The killer was indeed a close relative. Focus shifted immediately to a man named William Rose. But there was a complication. William Rose had taken his own life in 1974, just 2 years after Debbie's murder. A suspect who had vanished before he could ever be brought to justice. Undeterred, detectives obtained a court order to exhume his grave and collect a direct DNA sample. It was a race against time and decay, but after 51 years, the cold case was finally cracking wide open. The DNA from Rose's remains matched perfectly with the sample extracted from Debbie's clothing. The killer was found, though, only in death. William Rose was just 24 years old at the time of the murder, and surprisingly, he had never been a suspect. Investigators learned that his relatives had lived in the same apartment building as Debbie's family, and that Rose regularly visited them. It was plausible he had seen Debbie many times, perhaps even the night she disappeared. Based on neighbors' testimonies, it was likely that Rose was heading to visit family when he saw Debbie leaving the laundromat, walking toward her home. Eyewitnesses recalled Rose pulling into the parking lot between Debbie's house and the laundromat, leaving the engine running before forcibly taking Debbie and driving north, possibly toward a nearby clay quarry. Remarkably, Rose had no prior serious criminal record, only minor offenses. Whether he had committed other crimes or escaped notice at the time, no one could say. The case was finally closed, but the long shadow of grief remained. At a press conference announcing the discovery, Debbie's older brother Melvin thanked the countless individuals who had devoted decades to seeking justice for his sister. He expressed a poignant wish that their mother could have lived to witness the day when the truth was finally revealed. He solemnly added that she was now reunited with Debbie in heaven. Have you hit the subscribe button yet? I'm still waiting, bro. Case 3. The chilling murder of Karen Snyder. Karen Snyder was born on July 29, 1948, in the quiet, unsuspecting town of Cedar Lake, Indiana. She grew up in a large family, surrounded by siblings, yet behind this facade of normalcy lurked the subtle fractures of a life soon to be shattered. By her late teens, Karen had fallen for Paul, a boy who promised love, but whose shadow would soon darken her world. They married when Karen was just 17, and soon welcomed their daughter Paula in 1966. The young family moved to Calumet, Illinois, a small town near Chicago known for its peaceful streets and tight-knit community. But beneath its calm exterior, secrets simmered. Karen spent her days caring for their infant daughter, while Paul worked at the local railroad, its iron tracks carrying him away each night, leaving Karen isolated and vulnerable. This ordinary life, marked by quiet routines and simple joys, would soon be shattered by a darkness so profound that it would leave a lasting scar on the town, her family, and anyone who dared to uncover the chilling truth behind the seemingly safe streets of Calumet. On the chilling evening of November 12, 1966, Paul left for his night shift around 2 p.m., unaware that the life he knew was about to unravel into a nightmare. Hours later, anxiety crept into his mind when he tried calling Karen, his wife, but was met with silence. This was no ordinary silence. It was the kind that seeps deep into the bones, because Karen was supposed to be at home, tending to their 2-month-old daughter. The thought that she might have left the baby alone was unthinkable. Unable to reach her, Paul's worry quickly escalated into panic. He contacted his parents, who lived just a few houses away, and asked them to check on Karen. They hurried down the street, their knocks echoing through the still night air. But no answer came. The absence of a response gnawed at their minds, heightening the dread. Lacking a spare key, They pounded on the door for several agonizing minutes before retreating to inform Paul. Paul's concern spiraled as he decided to leave work early to see for himself. The closer he got to his home, the heavier the weight on his chest grew. The porch light, always left on by Karen to guide him after long night shifts, was dark. The blinds were drawn tight, shutting out even the faintest glow. It was an eerie silence that screamed danger. With trembling hands, Paul used his key to unlock the door, an action that should have brought relief but instead led him into a waking nightmare. Inside, he found their infant daughter peacefully sleeping in her playpen near the flickering TV. But Karen was nowhere to be seen. Calling her name, his voice trembling, Paul searched every corner of the house. Ascending the stairs, he attempted to illuminate the staircase with the light switch, but nothing responded. Finally, he reached the bedroom and flicked on a lamp, revealing a scene so horrifying it would be etched into his memory forever. The room was ransacked. Blood splattered wildly across the floor, walls, and furniture. Amongst the chaos lay Karen, lifeless and covered in blood. The room whispered tales of a desperate struggle, a fight for survival that ended in tragedy. Shaken beyond belief, Paul descended and immediately called the police. Outside, his parents found him distraught, tears streaming down his face, pleading for help. His mother, armed with a flashlight, rushed inside, but upon seeing Karen's bloodied body, she knew there was no hope left. Soon, medical personnel and law enforcement arrived, confirming the unthinkable. Karen was dead. Investigators meticulously examined the crime scene. The back door lock bore shallow scratches, an indication of a failed break-in attempt. Yet, the door remained locked, suggesting the intruder initially tried and failed to enter this way. Their attention turned to a broken basement window, near which a trail of blood led from the shattered glass to the front door. It appeared the intruder had cut themselves trying to gain entry through the basement, but eventually moved to the front door, which was either unlocked or opened by Karen herself. The living room was splattered with blood, implying the assault began there, near Karen's daughter's crib. The blood trail led up the stairs, through the hallway, and into the bedroom, where Karen's body was discovered. The bedroom was a chaotic battlefield, blood everywhere and many broken items, signaling Karen fought fiercely against her attacker. A phone, ripped from the wall, lay discarded, a desperate attempt by Karen to call for help that was tragically thwarted. In those days, emergency numbers like 911 didn't exist. Local police had separate numbers, and detectives believed Karen may have misdialed in panic. Near the staircase, a blood-covered light bulb was found unscrewed from its socket. The reason was unclear. Perhaps the intruder unscrewed it to plunge the stairs into darkness, hindering Karen's escape and aiding his pursuit. In the downstairs bathroom, a pile of bloody clothes and miscellaneous items were discovered. A pair of pants, a bedsheet, and a washcloth. Investigators believe the killer used these to wipe blood off his hands and clothes. He may have attempted to clean himself and cover his tracks, but the extensive bloodshed rendered these efforts futile. Afterward, the killer tossed these items into the bathtub before fleeing, indicating he lingered in the house for some time after the murder. Detectives swiftly ruled out robbery as a motive. The only missing items were Karen's blue wallet, containing about $50, and a bedside lamp of negligible value. Medical examiners' findings were grim. Karen sustained 124 stab wounds, primarily to her chest, a brutal and personal attack. The weapon was likely a narrow-bladed knife, similar to a stiletto, but it was never found in the house or nearby. Though Karen was fully clothed and showed no signs of sexual assault, investigators didn't dismiss the possibility that such a motive existed but was left unfulfilled. The time of death was estimated between 4 and 6 p.m. Paul discovered her body around 11 p.m., meaning the killer had ample time to escape. Investigators began interviewing family and friends. Paul's mother revealed Karen had expressed fear living in the house and a desire to move to Indiana to be near her parents, though she never explained why. Neighbors noted something unusual that night. Their dog, normally alert to the slightest sound, remained eerily silent. With no other leads, police focused on Paul, as spouses are often suspects in such cases. Analysis suggested the attempted break-in and basement window break might have been staged, hinting the killer was someone familiar with Karen trying to disguise the crime as a burglary. This implied Karen might have opened the door willingly or that the killer had a key. Paul was interrogated repeatedly about his whereabouts and opportunity to commit the crime. He denied involvement, and though suspicion lingered, evidence was scarce. Karen's funeral took place 6 days later. Among attendees was a man with a deep forehead wound and a bandaged hand, James Barbier, a friend of Paul and Karen who worked with Paul and had recently done repairs at their home. Investigators found James had visited a hospital that evening for stitches on his hand and face, injuries consistent with cutting himself on broken glass. James was questioned but claimed his injuries came from a drunken fall. His wife corroborated his intoxication but noted his unusual behavior. Witnesses placed James at local bars that day, though his exact timeline was unclear. Blood analysis revealed 2 blood types at the scene, Karen's and another matching James's blood type. Although this was not conclusive, James was arrested, hoping for a confession. Paul was cleared after no blood matched his type. James denied involvement, and despite forensic hopes, evidence was inconclusive. He was released, and the case went cold. Years passed, and the case remained unsolved, casting a long shadow over the small town once considered safe. As investigators turned their attention to James, a chilling pattern began to emerge. On the very evening of Karen's brutal murder, James had checked himself into a local hospital with severe injuries to his hand and face wounds that required stitches. This gruesome detail aligned disturbingly well with evidence from the crime scene. The killer had cut himself on the shards of a broken basement window. Suddenly, James became the prime suspect, and detectives brought him in for intense questioning. Yet he adamantly denied any involvement. His explanation for the injuries was a desperate story. He had been returning home drunk from a bar that night, tripped over a stump in the darkness, and hurt himself on splinters. His wife corroborated his tale, describing his drunken, erratic behavior and his visible shaking, though she insisted such episodes were not uncommon, given his long struggle with alcoholism. Police probed deeper, interviewing patrons from bars in Karen's neighborhood. Witnesses placed James at these establishments on the day of the murder, but frustratingly, no one could specify exact times, leaving a murky timeline. Meanwhile, forensic experts delved into the physical evidence collected from Karen's home. Their findings were haunting. 2 different blood types were discovered, one belonging to Karen and the other matching James's blood type. Although this blood match was far from a smoking gun, it cast a long shadow of suspicion over James. Determined to crack the case, police arrested James, hoping that the weight of evidence would force a confession. Meanwhile, Karen's husband Paul was cleared from suspicion. None of the blood samples matched his type. Despite the mounting pressure, James continued to deny involvement, steadfastly insisting his injuries were the result of an unfortunate fall. Forensic experts hoped for breakthroughs, but smudged fingerprints and the absence of DNA analysis hampered their efforts. The blood evidence alone was not enough to hold him. Eventually, authorities had no choice but to release James. The investigation trudged on, chasing new leads and interviewing dozens more, but the case stubbornly remained unsolved for years. Karen's horrific murder left an indelible scar on the once peaceful town. Residents whispered about the brutal crime for years, haunted by the question, who could have committed such a heinous act? Though police never publicly named suspects like James, those close to Karen quietly believed he was guilty, trapped in a frustrating limbo of suspicion without proof. The tragic shadow of Karen Snyder's murder stretched long over the years, weaving sorrow into the fabric of a small town once considered safe and peaceful. Karen's father passed away in 1973, only 7 years after the nightmare began, never knowing who had taken his daughter's life. Her mother followed in 1977, equally burdened by grief and unanswered questions. The killer's identity remained a haunting mystery, an invisible phantom that stole more than just a life. It stole peace and closure from a family. Paul, Karen's husband, eventually remarried, and his second wife stepped into the void left behind. She became the mother figure Paula, Karen and Paul's daughter, would grow up with, though Paula never had the chance to truly know her biological mother. To shield Paula from the horror that had ripped their family apart, her relatives chose silence, keeping the dark truth from her innocent ears. Yet the past has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply buried. Paula later recalled the cruel taunts she endured when starting school, children whispering and mocking simply because her mother was dead, a stigma she carried silently, her heart aching for answers. As Paula grew older, her relatives, fearing the fragile truth would come from others or leak through media reports, finally decided to tell her what had happened. The truth was a double-edged sword, both a burden and a key to understanding the shadows that had long haunted her life. In 1989, at the age of 45, Paul himself passed away from health complications, never uncovering the truth behind his wife's brutal death. For decades, the case remained cold unsolved, frozen in time, a puzzle with missing pieces. Paula, with the tenacity born from grief, occasionally spoke to journalists, her voice carrying hope for justice. She tirelessly reached out to the local police department, seeking updates, clinging to any sign of progress. Yet, she was repeatedly met with silence. No new leads, no breakthroughs, just the same cold case files gathering dust. Then, in late 2022, a curious call stirred the stagnant waters of this haunting case. A 29-year-old man contacted the police department responsible for Karen's murder, inquiring about any developments. He revealed that he had grown up hearing stories of the crime from his grandmother, a distant relative of Karen's family. The man was driven by a desire to know if the shadows of the past had finally been pierced by the light of justice. He spoke of reading old newspaper clippings at work and wondered aloud if modern technology could solve mysteries that once seemed beyond reach. This spark of hope, kindled by a distant family member's curiosity, prompted the police to reopen the investigation. With none of the original detectives remaining, a new team began sifting through the vast trove of evidence and case files. They found that nearly all the evidence, except for the blood samples from the crime scene floor, had been remarkably preserved for over 5 decades. Among the preserved items were Karen's clothing and various household objects. These were sent to forensic labs, where experts began meticulous examination using advanced technology that had revolutionized criminal investigations. Meanwhile, the police re-interviewed surviving witnesses and anyone connected to the case, piecing together fragments that had long been overlooked. 16 months into the renewed investigation, a breakthrough came: a call from the lab. Experts had discovered several drops of blood on Karen's dress and extracted a DNA profile of an unknown male. This revelation was a beacon in the dark, reigniting hope. The police swiftly obtained a warrant and collected a genetic sample from their primary suspect, James, who was still alive. His DNA was matched to the blood found on Karen's dress, confirming his presence at the crime scene on the day of the murder. On April 29, 2024, the 79-year-old James was arrested. Upon learning of the DNA match, he did not deny the charges but confessed, acknowledging that he had known all along that justice would catch him. Due to his age and severe health conditions, James was released on bail pending trial, the risk of flight considered negligible. Karen's relatives, having endured decades of torment, were devastated to realize the killer had lived freely for over 50 years. The motive remained shrouded in mystery. The primary theory suggested James harbored feelings for Karen and jealousy toward her husband. His heavy intoxication the night of the murder may have driven him to commit the horrific act. Despite his confession, the toll on the family persisted. Karen's daughter, now 57, recalled the moment she received the call, the best news of her life. She had long lost hope but was amazed at how well the evidence had been preserved. She confessed that James's crime had contributed to her father's early death, as he lived burdened by suspicion and grief, haunted by the betrayal of a close friend. If you liked the video, please give me a like. And don't forget to share your own thoughts in the comments below. Case 4. Melissa Trimble, a disappearance that shocked a town. Melissa Trimble was born on March 1, 1977, in Lawrence, Massachusetts, a small city that, on the surface, appeared like any other. Yet behind its quiet streets and everyday faces lay stories that would chill the soul. Melissa's early life began with a mystery of its own. When she was just a month old, her biological parents made the heart-wrenching decision to give her up for adoption. She was taken in by Jeanette and Robert Trimble, a couple who raised her in nearby Salem, New Hampshire. From the start, Melissa was a vibrant and energetic child, full of life and curiosity. She was drawn to fashion and music, her voice often heard singing tunes that belied her young age. More than that, she possessed a rare love for reading, a passion that set her apart from her peers. Her school days were filled with laughter and friendship, her social circle wide and welcoming. Melissa's world was bright, painted with innocent joys. But the undercurrents beneath this happy facade would soon ripple with tension. When Melissa was 9, her adoptive parents divorced, fracturing the stability she once knew. Her father withdrew from her life, leaving her with her mother Jeanette, who later began dating a man named Robert. Though he was not a part of their household, he became a figure intertwined with their story. The date was September 11, 1988. Melissa, now 11, accompanied her mother to Lawrence, the city of her birth. There, Jeanette was supposed to meet Robert, often spending time at a local bar, a place that would unknowingly become a silent witness to what was to come. Because Jeanette had no one to watch Melissa, she brought her along. The young girl, bored of sitting inside the bar, was allowed to play outside, yet always within sight, or so Jeanette believed. Melissa's mother's instructions were clear: don't go far. And for the most part, Melissa obeyed, roaming the nearby streets and mingling with other children who lived or played in the area. She was familiar with the neighborhood, having made several friends there. That day, Melissa spent much of her time outdoors, occasionally checking in with her mother. At one point, a kind bartender made her some popcorn, a small kindness in an otherwise ordinary afternoon. Melissa promised she'd return for it soon, and then left, but she never came back. As the clock approached 4 p.m., a creeping worry began to settle over Jeanette. Melissa had been gone for longer than expected. She looked outside, checked the car, and called out, but there was no sign of the child. Along with Robert, Jeanette started an urgent search, combing street by street, but their calls and pleas yielded nothing. Hours passed. Darkness descended, swallowing the streets in shadow. At 9 p.m., desperation pushed Jeanette to call the police. Officers joined the search, scouring every corner, every alley, but Melissa seemed to have vanished into thin air. The night deepened, making their task all the more difficult. Despite this, the police pressed on, chasing leads late into the night. The grim possibility that Melissa might have run away crossed their minds, but her mother's insistence held firm. Melissa was afraid of the dark and hated being alone. She would never willingly disappear into the night. The next day came, but Melissa's whereabouts remained a mystery. The search continued without pause. Then, around 3 p.m., a railroad worker performing a routine inspection of an old rail yard just a few hundred yards from the bar noticed something disturbing. The yard was sprawling, with as many as 8 tracks, many long disused. Empty boxcars lined the area, shadows hiding secrets. Between 2 of these boxcars, the worker saw something unnatural. Approaching, the horrifying truth emerged: a human body. He immediately alerted the police. Detectives arrived swiftly, identifying the body as Melissa Trimble. Her disappearance had been reported the previous morning, but the scene was far worse than anyone had feared. Near the body lay a purse containing a card from the Boys and Girls Club, Melissa's club, confirming her identity. Her body rested on active train tracks, and one of her legs was severed. At first glance, it seemed the victim had been struck by a passing train. But the lead detective's trained eye spotted inconsistencies. The purse, containing the card with Melissa's name, was found nearly 20 yards away from the body, a distance unlikely for a train accident to fling it. Around the purse, a cluster of footprints and drops of blood told a darker tale. The suspicion grew that Melissa had been attacked there, then her body moved to the tracks, an attempt by a ruthless assailant to stage a tragic accident. The location itself whispered danger. The old rail yard was notorious as a hangout for the homeless and others, seeking secluded spots for illicit activities. It was plausible, even likely, that someone among them had preyed on the young girl. Melissa's body was sent for medical examination, while the police launched a meticulous search for clues. What began as a disappearance had now morphed into a chilling homicide investigation, where every shadow in that forgotten rail yard held a secret, and every footstep might lead closer to the truth. With no tangible evidence left at the grim scene where Melissa's body was found, investigators turned their focus to the shadows, searching for witnesses who could illuminate the dark timeline leading to her death. Their first breakthrough came from a railroad employee who, the day before the body was discovered, had seen a young girl matching Melissa's description near the dangerous tracks. He warned her to leave immediately, but what fate awaited the child after she vanished from his sight remained a chilling unknown. Further digging led police to a woman living near the bar where Melissa's mother frequented. This woman had known Melissa for months through her own children's friendship with the girl. On that fateful day, Melissa had come to invite the woman's children to play, only to be told they were grounded. Left alone, Melissa wandered into the gathering darkness. The investigation took a darker turn with the testimony of another witness, who saw a girl resembling Melissa standing beside a decrepit van at a lonely intersection near the rail yard. The van's driver, a disheveled man around 30 years old, with dark hair and a scruffy beard, became the focus of the hunt. The van itself, old and rusted, seemed to hold the secrets investigators desperately sought. Meanwhile, medical examiners completed their report, smashing the initial theory of a tragic train accident. Melissa's body bore bruises and 3 fatal stab wounds, inflicted with a left-handed assailant's precision. No signs of sexual assault or foreign biological material complicated the case further, sharpening the focus on a cold-blooded homicide. Despite this, police faced a maddening challenge. Though the van was identified as a key clue, linking it and its driver to Melissa's murder was nearly impossible without a confession or forensic evidence. DNA testing was not yet available, and no fingerprints or personal items were recovered from the vehicle. The detectives expanded their search, interviewing hundreds in the neighborhood, but their efforts yielded frustratingly little. The van's trail grew cold, and the case slipped into darkness. Melissa's murder gripped the media, fueling public outrage. Many directed their anger at Jeanette, Melissa's mother, condemning her for allowing the young girl to roam unsupervised near such a perilous place. Adding fuel to the fire were rumors of Jeanette's struggles with alcohol following her divorce, alongside criticisms of social services for failing to intervene. Jeanette remained silent, refusing to engage with the media or explain the circumstances. Child Protective Services confirmed their awareness of the family's troubled history, but insisted revoking Jeanette's parental rights had never been considered. As months faded into years, the haunting question remained: who silenced Melissa? The van and its shadowy driver lingered in the minds of investigators, a ghostly lead that refused to die. Years passed with no progress. The case of Melissa Trimble haunted investigators, a cold whisper of a girl lost and a mystery unsolved. Police diligently reviewed every lead, interrogated numerous suspects, but the trails stubbornly ran cold. The community's hope faded, but the darkness surrounding Melissa's fate grew deeper. In 2012, years after Melissa's tragic death, investigators identified their first potential suspect, Tommy Lynn Sells, a man whose name sent chills through the criminal world. Sells was a confessed serial killer, admitting to 22 murders across multiple states. As detectives examined the grisly details of his crimes, many chilling similarities to Melissa's murder surfaced. His penchant for hunting vulnerable victims in secluded areas, his transient lifestyle sleeping in empty boxcars, all echoed the haunting circumstances of Melissa's death. Moreover, witnesses described Sells as resembling the van driver seen with Melissa near the rail yard, a large, unkempt man matching the unsettling profile. This connection placed him high on the list of persons of interest. Yet, despite exhaustive efforts, law enforcement could find no concrete evidence placing Tommy Lynn Sells near Lawrence at the time of Melissa's disappearance. Instead, they uncovered records indicating he was in another state entirely, eluding justice for this particular crime. The case slipped back into the shadows, growing colder with each passing year. Then, in 2013, an unexpected break surfaced. Police arrested a man from Lawrence on unrelated charges. During questioning, the man dropped a bombshell. He claimed to possess knowledge about Melissa Trimble's murder. The man recounted his life as a teenage car thief at age 13, wandering the streets in search of stolen vehicles. On the day Melissa vanished, he said, he saw a girl matching her description sitting on the steps of the same bar where her mother frequented. Beside her stood a man named Mike, a figure known to the witness, but shunned by his family due to a questionable reputation. According to the witness, after passing them, he returned 10 minutes later to find Melissa leaving the bar with Mike. Shortly thereafter, an unfamiliar man approached, and the three walked away together into the murky night. When police pressed the witness about his long silence, 25 years without speaking, he confessed fear. At the time, he wanted no trouble with the authorities. Only after learning of Melissa's murder did he wrestle with guilt and hesitation, consulting his brother, who urged silence. Detectives, however, found glaring contradictions in this tale. The witness claimed to have seen Melissa at night, on the bar's steps, yet official records placed her disappearance around 4 p.m., broad daylight. Given the bar patrons and staff's awareness of her absence and her mother's desperate search, it seemed implausible that Melissa could have lingered unnoticed outside the bar well into the night. Police speculated the witness might have confused another girl for Melissa or erred in recalling the timeline. Despite these doubts, Mike became a person of interest. Yet no tangible leads emerged from this angle. Nonetheless, the witness's account breathed new life into the cold case. In 2014, leveraging the revolutionary rise of DNA technology, police reopened the investigation with renewed vigor. Experts re-examined all available evidence, meticulously combing through Melissa's clothing and personal items. Initial results were disappointing. No foreign DNA was detected. But then, a subtle clue surfaced, a sample collected from beneath Melissa's fingernails, taken in case she had scratched her attacker. Analysis revealed traces of foreign skin, promptly sent to forensic labs. Here, the case faced a new hurdle. The DNA profile extracted was partial fragmentary, incomplete, and failed to match any entries in national databases. Identification remained elusive, frustrating investigators. Refusing to relent, the police enlisted the help of a genetic genealogy company, experts in unraveling familial connections from partial DNA. The company's task was daunting, working with incomplete profiles, limited certainty. Still, through painstaking research and cross-referencing, they pinpointed a possible distant relative of the unknown DNA's owner within public databases. This led to a family bearing the surname McClendon. Detectives launched a thorough investigation into this family, seeking the elusive killer. Years passed as they painstakingly examined records, timelines, and DNA matches, striving to connect one member to the crime. Their scrutiny narrowed to two brothers, notably Marvin McClendon. Though residing in Alabama during the investigation, records showed Marvin had lived just 20 minutes from Lawrence in the late 1980s and worked as a carpenter. Further digging revealed Marvin's frequent visits to a church mere yards from the bar where Melissa was last seen. His career included decades as a prison guard, with intermittent breaks, including one in 1988. More pieces fell into place when police discovered Marvin owned an old brown van matching the witness description of van seen near the rail yard on the day of the murder. Despite his troubled personal life, multiple marriages, and estranged relationships, Marvin had no significant criminal record aside from minor traffic violations. Notably, he was left-handed, aligning with forensic conclusions about the killer's handedness. Meanwhile, Melissa's mother, Jeanette, battled a severe illness and passed away in 2015, never learning who had taken her daughter. By 2021, with accumulated evidence and DNA connections, investigators concluded Marvin was their prime suspect. In Alabama, they confronted him about the late 1980s and Melissa's murder. Marvin denied involvement, suggesting the DNA might belong to his brother. Later that year, Marvin voluntarily provided a DNA sample. However, experts still couldn't establish a complete match. Only a partial profile linking him closely to the crime scene, DNA. Other male relatives were ruled out, cementing suspicion on Marvin. Aware of the challenges in securing a conviction without full DNA proof, investigators continued their pursuit, seeking additional clues and interviewing related persons. They also investigated Mike, the man from the witness account, but DNA from Mike did not match the evidence, ruling him out. After multiple interrogations and gathering evidence, in April 2022, Marvin was arrested. Despite maintaining innocence, he reportedly remarked, "At least I got to enjoy 20 years of my pension," hinting at resignation. At 74 years old, Marvin awaited trial under protection, as fellow inmates quickly learned of his charges and former role as a prison guard. Without conclusive DNA evidence, the prosecution relied heavily on a process of elimination. DNA from someone in Marvin's family was found beneath Melissa's nails, but none of his close relatives had opportunity or motive. Experts noted that distant relatives would show less DNA similarity, making the partial profile particularly significant. Marvin's frequent church visits, ownership of the van, and proximity to the bar matched critical witness descriptions. The trial commenced in December 2022. Marvin's defense focused on the lack of a complete DNA profile, arguing insufficient proof. Forensic and genetics experts testified, some disputing conclusions about the killer's handedness and the significance of partial DNA matches. Marvin declined to testify. After nearly a week, the jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict. Some jurors cited the incomplete DNA as a barrier to conviction. The judge declared a mistrial. In early 2024, prosecutors announced plans for a retrial scheduled for September 30th, 2024. Until then, Marvin remained jailed, battling multiple health issues at age 76. There was concern he might not survive to see the new trial. Should the court fail to convict again, Marvin could be released, leaving Melissa's murder an unsolved enigma, her truth possibly lost forever. Case 5. The Tragic Journey of Tanya and Jay. Tanya Van Kenborg entered the world on March 7, 1969, in the quiet city of Victoria, Canada. Raised by devoted parents alongside an older brother she adored, Tanya's childhood was marked by warmth and curiosity. From an early age, she showed a gentle love for animals, dreaming of one day becoming a veterinarian. But her heart was restless, fueled by a hunger to see the world beyond her small hometown. That yearning only deepened during a high school trip to Paris with her best friend, a journey that ignited in her an insatiable desire to explore, to wander far from the familiar streets of Victoria. It was the kind of trip that shifts a person's trajectory, planting dreams that refuse to be ignored. At 18, on the cusp of graduating high school, Tanya's path intertwined with Jay Cook, a young man 2 years her senior. They met through mutual friends at school, just as Jay was stepping into the world beyond the classroom. Though their relationship was new and not yet serious, Jay's presence offered something enticing to Tanya's adventurous spirit. Despite her passion for veterinary science, Tanya chose to pause before college, intent on saving money for travel. She took a job at a cafe and worked as a dog walker, each day building a fund for the journey ahead. Jay, too, skipped college. Instead, he immersed himself in the family business, installing heating systems alongside his father, a trade handed down like an unspoken legacy. Then came November 1987, a seemingly ordinary month destined to twist into nightmare. Jay's father received an urgent order for a crucial heating system part, a component not available locally. The nearest stock was across the border in Seattle, Washington. The elder Cook, overwhelmed with work, turned to his son, asking Jay to make the trip. Jay agreed, not only eager to assist his father, but excited to invite Tanya along. The promise of a road trip northward, from Victoria to Seattle and back, sparked a flicker of hope in their young relationship. They planned to leave early morning, cross 2 ferry rides, the first into the U.S., the second spanning Seattle's Bay, arrive by evening, and return the next day. Jay's father handed over the family van and enough money to cover the part and hotel expenses. Yet the couple decided to forego the hotel, opting to sleep in the van instead, saving every penny for the future adventures they dreamed about. On the morning of November 18th, Tanya and Jay climbed into the van, their spirits high, unaware of the dark clouds gathering over the journey ahead. Their families expected them back by afternoon the next day, but hours slipped away with no sign of the pair. Anxious glances toward the clock and missed calls soon turned into mounting fear. If the couple had caught the scheduled ferries, they should have been home long ago. Yet there was no word. Parents grappled with desperate hope, considering the possibility of a spontaneous detour to savor the region's beauty, perhaps causing a missed ferry at Port Angeles. But as darkness descended without a hint, that hope frayed. The next morning, worry hardened into alarm. Tanya and Jay's parents joined forces, calling police to file missing persons reports. But local law enforcement, citing the lack of evidence indicating foul play, dismissed the urgency. Tanya was 18, Jay 20, both adults, capable of making their own choices, they said. Maybe it was just an extended adventure. Frustration simmered. The families knew their children. Jay had responsibilities, an important job awaiting for his father's business. He wasn't reckless or careless. And Tanya, cautious and kind, had never been one to disappear without a trace. If they truly intended to extend their journey, why no calls from the payphones that dotted the route? Why no messages to reassure worried loved ones? Determined, Tanya's father took matters into his own hands. He contacted the supplier in Seattle, no sign of Jay or Tanya picking up the part. Hours passed. The trail grew colder. He scoured the route in his own car, eyes searching for any sign of their van. But the dense forests and winding roads swallowed all clues. Refusing defeat, he rented a helicopter with a pilot to survey the landscape from above. The aerial view revealed endless stretches of wilderness, but no trace of the missing couple. Flyers with Tanya and Jay's photos went up across Seattle's streets. The families refused to surrender to despair, rallying every resource to find answers. Gradually, the local police began to recognize the seriousness of the case. Calls were made, descriptions and photos shared with Seattle authorities, urging vigilance. Yet the shadows of uncertainty stretched long. Tanya and Jay's disappearance was no longer a mere mystery. It was a race against time to uncover a truth veiled in silence. 5 days after Tanya and Jay vanished into the shadows, fate delivered a grim revelation. A man wandering near a dense forest about 90 miles north of Seattle stumbled upon something that would shatter the fragile hope still held by their families. Beneath an old tree, partially hidden by the thick underbrush, lay the lifeless body of a young woman. His heart pounding, he called the police immediately. Officers arrived swiftly to a haunting scene. The woman's clothes were torn and partially missing. Her hands were bound tightly, an unsettling testament to the violence she had endured. Most chilling of all was the fatal gunshot wound to her head. The sparse blood near the body told investigators this was not the place of her death. It was a carefully chosen dumping ground. No identification was found on the victim, prompting a rapid cross-check with the missing persons lists. The somber conclusion came swiftly. The body matched the description of Tanya Van Kenborg. Her father, devastated, confirmed the worst at the morgue. As detectives pieced together the threads, they learned Tanya had been traveling with Jay Cook, whose fate remained unknown. Jay's van was also missing, a void that drew suspicion toward him. But Jay's family vehemently denied any possibility of his involvement. They painted a picture of a loving, gentle man, one who had never shown aggression or possession of a firearm. His inability to legally own a gun made the brutal nature of Tanya's death seem even more baffling if he were implicated. Amidst this uncertainty, another call came. A bartender from Bellingham, just 18 miles from the discovery site. He had found a wallet and keys discarded nearby. Inside the wallet, an ID card bearing Tanya's name. Initially, he hesitated to alert authorities, hoping the owner might return. But after a news report aired about Tanya's murder, urgency prevailed, and he dialed 911. Investigators combed the area around the bar and uncovered disturbing evidence. Several plastic zip ties identical to those used to bind Tanya's hands were found under the back porch. Nearby, discarded rubber gloves and a half-empty box of bullets hinted at the cold calculation of the killer. Their attention then turned to a van parked close by, the same vehicle Tanya and Jay had traveled in. Inside, chaos reigned. Receipts scattered across the floor traced the couple's route, including a ferry ticket proving they had reached Seattle. Yet Tanya's camera, carried on the trip, was missing, possibly taken by the perpetrator to conceal evidence. Bloodstains stained the van's interior, and forensic experts collected samples, hoping science might light the way in this murky case. Though DNA analysis was in its infancy within criminology, it had already solved other cold cases. The lab's findings revealed 3 distinct blood samples, Tanya's, Jay's, and a third unknown male. Without the FBI's DNA database, identifying the unknown was impossible. Detectives, however, began to clear Jay of suspicion. His blood in the van aligned with his presence, but no evidence connected him to the murder. Instead, questions mounted. Was Jay alive? Where was he? The mystery deepened, with hope hanging by a thread and answers still out of reach. The chilling truth began to unravel swiftly. On November 26th, just days after Tanya and Jay vanished without a trace, a group of friends hunting near a remote bridge outside Seattle stumbled upon a grim scene, a human body hidden in the shadows of dense bushes. The discovery shattered the fragile hope that still lingered in the hearts of families and investigators alike. Law enforcement responded quickly, arriving at a scene that was as disturbing as it was tragic. The deceased was soon identified as Jay Cook. His battered body bore numerous bruises, and forensic examination revealed strangulation as the cause of death, a brutal and personal form of violence. Detectives speculated that the killer may have known Jay, their investigation hinting at motives beyond mere chance. The proximity of Jay's body to Seattle suggested he was likely the first victim, a grim prelude to what lay ahead for Tanya. Investigators hypothesized a horrifying sequence. After Jay was murdered, The perpetrator drove Tanya in the couple's van, almost to the Canadian border. There, in a secluded wooded area, Tanya met her tragic end. Medical experts found traces of semen on Tanya's body. DNA analysis linked it to the same unknown man whose blood was discovered in the van. Yet, despite these connections, his identity remained a haunting mystery. While grappling with these grim realities, investigators attempted to piece together the couple's final movements. Receipts discovered in the van provided critical clues. After taking the ferry from Victoria to Port Angeles, Tanya and Jay made a brief stop at a local store to buy food. From there, their journey headed toward Seattle, but a missed turn led them away from the most direct route. This detour was confirmed by a receipt from a store in Hoodsport, a small town en route. A store clerk remembered the young couple vividly. They matched Tanya and Jay's descriptions, and they had asked for directions to the ferry crossing. The clerk also shared a chilling observation. She believed a man in a brown raincoat had been following the couple. This man had entered the store shortly after Tanya and Jay arrived, and left soon after they did. Where he went next remained unknown. The couple continued their journey, visiting another store in the town of Allen before reaching the ferry near Seattle, where they purchased tickets. Multiple witnesses placed Tanya and Jay in the vicinity, but beyond this point, their trail went cold. Detectives expanded their net, scrutinizing individuals in Seattle with histories of violent crimes. But each potential lead ended in frustration. Despite possessing the DNA of the killer, police struggled to match it to any known person. The perpetrator appeared to be a shadow, elusive and untraceable. Investigators believed the killer was no amateur. The meticulous planning and execution suggested a man experienced in violence, someone who likely followed the couple for some time, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was theorized that he gained their trust, perhaps asking for a ride, only to brandish a weapon later, forcing compliance with his deadly demands. Adding a sinister layer to the case, investigators noted that Tanya's belongings, along with rubber gloves used in the crime, were deliberately left in plain sight. It was as if the killer was taunting the police, confident that he would remain beyond their reach. Gloves ensured no fingerprints could be lifted, a chilling message that he had covered his tracks with cold calculation. Forensic experts did find several fingerprints on the van, none belonging to Tanya or Jay. However, police doubted these prints belonged to the killer, given the use of gloves. These prints were never matched to any individual in any database, providing no breakthrough. In the weeks that followed, detectives tirelessly chased new leads, questioned witnesses, and examined suspects. Yet none yielded the crucial evidence needed. The case seemed destined to remain a haunting mystery. Then, about a month after the murders, an unsettling twist emerged. Tanya and Jay's families began receiving letters and postcards from someone claiming to be the killer. The messages were filled with chilling confessions, cruel taunts aimed at the grieving families, and boasts that the police would never catch him. Tracing the sender was an enormous challenge. In those days, tracking the origin of letters was imprecise. Authorities could only determine the cities from which the letters were sent, a breadcrumb trail leading nowhere definitive. The letters arrived regularly, often during holidays, intensifying the pain for the families who saw them as cruel reminders of the unresolved nightmare. The letters were sent from multiple cities and states, suggesting the sender traveled frequently. Yet, investigators remained skeptical. In high-profile cases, it is common for imposters to torment victims' families with fake letters. These false claims muddy the waters, clouding real leads. Despite the barrage of letters, the investigation stalled. Years slipped by without significant progress. Detectives maintained an open mind, considering the involvement of a serial killer, a hypothesis fueled by the abduction of two other couples in nearby areas in recent years. Although connections were tenuous, the possibility added urgency. Several serial killers were eventually apprehended in the region, but none were linked to Tanya and Jay's murders. In 2003, the case reopened with the integration of DNA evidence into the FBI database. No matches appeared, but the belief persisted that the killer had an extensive criminal history, undetected or arrested before DNA sampling became routine. The case gained national attention in 2010 through a popular TV program, sparking a flood of new tips. One tip led police to a 78-year-old man from Seattle who matched the letter sender's travel history. Authorities investigated, but determined he had severe mental health issues and was not involved in the murders. His DNA did not match crime scene samples. The real breakthrough came in 2018 with the help of Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in creating composite sketches from DNA. With no other leads, investigators embraced this cutting-edge technology. Parabon generated age-progressed images of the killer, released to the public in hopes of recognition. The results were disappointing, yielding no matches. Undeterred, investigators pursued genetic genealogy, analyzing the killer's DNA to trace distant relatives. This painstaking work identified a possible second cousin, which led them to narrow down suspects to a man living in Seattle during the late 1980s. With assistance from the cousin, detectives zeroed in on William Talit, a 55-year-old truck driver living in a Seattle suburb. To confirm, police surveilled William and collected a discarded coffee cup, obtaining a DNA sample that perfectly matched the unknown killer. In mid-May 2018, 30 years after the brutal murders, William was arrested. He denied involvement, and the case moved to trial in 2019. William's defense challenged the DNA evidence, suggesting that semen on Tanya's body could have been from consensual relations, and pointing out lack of direct evidence tying him to Jay's death. However, the prosecution countered effectively. Fingerprints found on the van in 1987 did not match Tanya or Jay, nor anyone in databases at the time. But when compared to William's, they were a match. Additional testimony came from William's friend, who recalled seeing a brown van, not belonging to William, parked near his house in 1987. This suggested William had access to the vehicle involved in the crime. William lived only miles from where Jay's body was discovered, familiar with the terrain. Family members described William as aggressive, many fearing him and severing contact. None were surprised by the charges. The prosecution argued William had asked Tanya and Jay for a ride under false pretenses, then coerced them at gunpoint to remote locations where he murdered them. He discarded Tanya's belongings and the van far away and remained hidden from law enforcement for decades. Without a confession, details remained unclear, but evidence left no doubt about his guilt. The trial concluded in June 2019 with William found guilty of double murder and sentenced to life, without parole. Notably, this was the first conviction achieved using genetic genealogy. But the case was not over. William's lawyers appealed, alleging juror bias violating constitutional rights. A judge overturned the conviction in 2021, granting a retrial. In 2022, a higher court reversed that decision, upholding the original verdict. William's connection to other crimes remains uncertain. Though he had prior convictions, none involved murder. Investigators suspect he may be linked to other unsolved cases, given the sophistication of these murders and his ability to evade justice for decades. But the full truth may never surface. Share your thoughts on this story in the comment section, and don't forget to press the like button. If you enjoyed my video, thank you for watching.